That's enough! Susan! My mom shouted, her voice trembling with frustration as she leaned forward, glaring at me from across the table. The Christmas ornaments sparkled faintly beneath the dim glow of the living room lights, but the warmth in the room felt like a cruel mockery. I sat there frozen, my hands clenched tightly in my lap, trying to control the anger rising inside me. Then my dad spoke, his tone equally sharp. You've always had a way of turning everything into a drama about you. His words hit harder than I expected, and for a moment, all I could hear was the quiet ticking of the mantel clock. My name is Susan Blanchard. I was 32 years old then, and this all unfolded in the late 1970s. It was a time when families depended on each other, especially in a place like rural Illinois. Our family farm, passed down through generations, had always been at the heart of our lives, but it was struggling. I had left for Chicago years before becoming a lawyer, something my parents still saw as a rejection of everything we stood for. My older brother Jake had stayed behind, running the farm and basking in their constant praise. I never resented him for staying. What I did resent was how, no matter what I did, I was always the outsider. Since summer, I had been quietly wiring money into the farm's account, money Jake told me was desperately needed. He'd asked me not to tell our parents, saying it would damage their pride and make them feel like failures. At the time, I agreed. I didn't want to embarrass them, and I trusted Jake. But sitting there on Christmas Eve, listening to our parents gush about how Jake had sacrificed everything to keep the farm going, I felt like I'd been punched. It hit me. He'd taken credit for every dollar I'd sent. Jake's the reason we've managed to keep things running, my mom said, her voice thick with pride. I don't know what we'd do without him. I looked across the room at Jake, hoping for a flicker of guilt or acknowledgement, but all I saw was a smug smirk as he leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the performance. That's when I finally spoke up. Actually, I said, my voice trembling, but loud enough to cut through the chatter. I've been the one sending the money every month since July. My dad scoffed, shaking his head like I'd just told the most ridiculous lie he'd ever heard. Don't start making things up, Susan. Jake's been working nonstop for this family. Why would you even say that? The sting of his words hurt, but it was the dismissive tone that crushed me. My mom crossed her arms and added, You've always had this need to be the center of attention. It's Christmas. Susan, can we not ruin the night? I felt my face go hot, embarrassment and fury swirling inside me. I'm not making it up, I said, my voice firmer this time. I've been depositing money directly into the farm account at the Chicago branch every single month. Those deposits came from me, but they didn't listen. My dad waved me off, annoyed, and my mom turned to Jake, who just shrugged as if he had no clue what I was talking about. I turned to him, my voice sharp. Are you seriously going to sit there and lie, Jake? You know, I've been making those deposits all this time. He didn't even blink. He leaned back, smirking again. I have no idea what you're talking about, Susan, he said with that fake innocence that made my blood boil. Unbelievable, I muttered, shaking my head. My parents didn't react. My dad sighed, like I was the one ruining the evening, while my mom gave Jake a sympathetic look, like he was the one being unfairly accused. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I faced Jake directly. You know exactly what I'm talking about, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Those deposits weren't small. You let them believe you were the hero when I was the one keeping this place afloat. Admit it now, or I'm leaving tomorrow to get the proof myself. Jake shrugged again. You're wasting your time, Susan, he said with a chuckle. Whatever fantasy you've created, go ahead and prove it. In that moment, I saw it clearly. He didn't believe I'd actually do it. He thought, like always, I'd eventually back down and let it blow over. His smug grin said it all, but this time was different. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not again. Early the next morning, I packed my bags. I couldn't stand another moment in that house. When I told my parents I was leaving, my mom sighed, her voice heavy with disapproval. It's Christmas, Susan, she said, like I was the one ruining everything. My dad didn't even look up from his coffee. Can't get through a single holiday without drama? He muttered. Jake barely hid his grin. But I wasn't staying, not while everyone acted like I was the villain. I knew the banks would be closed, but I didn't care. I just needed out. The drive to Chicago felt endless. The roads were quiet, most people home with their families. I gripped the wheel, the cold air seeping through despite the heater blasting. My mind kept racing, replaying everything Jake had done and how my parents had chosen his side, but this time I wasn't going to be silent. When the bank reopened a few days later, I went straight there. The air was freezing, each breath stinging my lungs. Inside, I approached the counter and explained calm, but firm that I needed records of every deposit made to the farm account since July. The teller nodded and returned with a thick ledger and a receipt printer. One by one, he printed out each transaction, my name, the dates, the amounts, all clearly listed. When he handed me the stack, I thanked him, my hands shaking slightly. These weren't just receipts, they were proof. I drove straight back. Snow still blanketed the roads, but I didn't care. The receipts were stacked neatly beside me, weighted down by a paperweight from my desk. Every time I glanced at them, the anger boiled anew. Jake had stolen my efforts and soaked up the praise, while I was left dismissed. By the time I reached the farm, adrenaline was coursing through me. I wasn't sure how it would go, but I knew one thing. They were going to see the truth. I walked in, the cold still clinging to my coat. My mom stirred a pot at the stove. My dad sat reading the paper, and Jake leaned against the counter, eating an apple. They all looked at me, but before they could speak, I dropped the receipts onto the table. There, I said, steady but firm. Every deposit I've made since July, my name, the dates, the amounts, all of it. My dad frowned as he picked up the stack, flipping through the pages. My mom joined him, drying her hands. Jake didn't move, but I saw a moment. His smirk faltered. This can't be right, my dad muttered. Why would you do this, Susan? My mom asked, her voice full of confusion. Jake told us he's been covering everything. I turned to him. So, Jake? Still want to lie? He tossed his apple core in the trash and laughed. I don't know where you got those, but they're fake. Probably forged them to make me look bad. I looked at my parents, hoping they'd see through it, but they didn't. Susan, what's gotten into you? My dad said, shaking his head. This is Loewen. For you. My mom held the papers like they were poison. Jake's here every day working You expect us to believe this? They're not fake, I said, my voice shaking. Call the bank, they'll tell you, but they refuse to listen. I can't believe this, I snapped. Even with the proof, you still defend him. Jake leaned back, arms crossed. Don't be so dramatic. Susan, you've always been jealous. That was it. I couldn't take any more. You know what? I'm done. Don't expect me to come back. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. The cold slapped my face, but it felt better than staying. Back in Chicago, I unpacked, called the bank, and stopped the transfers. It felt like cutting a cord end. It was freeing. No more being taken for granted. If they wanted Jake to be their hero, they could live with the consequences. 6 months passed with no word. Then, one summer afternoon, there was a knock at the door. I opened it and there they were. My parents, looking tired, ashamed. Can we come in? My dad asked. They sat awkwardly on the couch. I crossed my arms. What do you want? My dad cleared his throat. Susan, we owe you an apology. My mom nodded. We were wrong. We didn't believe you and we need to make this right. After I left, the farm began falling apart. Bills, repairs, failing crops. Jake couldn't manage it and eventually he confessed everything. You were the one making those deposits, my mom said tearfully. You saved the farm. They asked for forgiveness. I stared at them in silence. Then I asked, where's Jake? He's at the farm, she said. He wanted to come, but we thought it best to speak to you first. You're still protecting him, I snapped. He should be here, apologizing. You should have made him come, my voice echoed. My dad looked away. You're right. You're right. He whispered. It's what we've always done. They left regret written on their faces. A week later, another knock. It was Jake. Miserable. Nervous. I came to apologize, he said. He admitted everything. His jealousy, his lies, his shame. He broke down, crying real, raw sobs. After that, something shifted. My parents stopped making excuses. Jake stayed away, and slowly I found peace. Things weren't perfect, but they were finally fair.